The coffee in the break room on the 14th floor always tasted like burnt copper and ambition, a fitting flavor for a defense contracting firm in DC that prided itself on synergy while casually managing data streams that could topple unstable regimes. I stood by the window, watching the morning traffic choke the arteries of the capital, my reflection ghosting against the glass. To the casual observer, to the HR department, and certainly to my new boss, I was Alina Rudenko, a 42-year-old compliance risk officer with a penchant for gray cardigans, silence, and tedious spreadsheet audits. I was the woman you forgot the moment you left the elevator. I was the office furniture of the cybersecurity division. That was the point. You don't hide a needle in a haystack, you hide it in a pile of other needles. I took a sip of the terrible coffee and checked my watch. 0800 a.m. In precisely 3 minutes, morning briefing would start. By the way, if you're reading this and enjoy stories about corporate idiots accidentally triggering international incidents, go ahead and hit subscribe and give this a like. It keeps the team motivated to share more nightmare fuel. Anyway, back to the impending disaster. The briefing was standard procedure, but the atmosphere had shifted in the last week. The air in the office felt thinner, sharper. That's because of Chase. Chase. Even saying his name in my head made my molars grind. He was our new director of operations, a 30-something external hire from Silicon Valley who wore sneakers with suits and used words like disrupt and paradigm shift as if they were punctuation. He didn't understand that in our line of work, handling back-end data for federal intelligence agencies, disruption usually meant people died. He looked at me and saw a relic, a barrier. A middle-aged woman who slowed down his agile workflow with pesky things like federal security protocols and need-to-know compartmentation. I walked into the conference room. It was one of those glass-walled fishbowls designed to make everyone feel exposed. Chase was already there, leaning back in the leather chair at the head of the table, spinning a pen. He had that gleam in his eye, look of a man who has never been told no and certainly never had to clean up the mess when a yes went wrong. Alina, he said, not looking up from his tablet. Glad you could join us. I was just telling the team about the new vision for Q3. Good morning, Chase, I said, my voice level, devoid of inflection. I took my usual seat in the corner, away from the main cluster of eager junior analysts who were practically vibrating with the desire to impress him. You need to trim the fat, Chase announced, finally looking up. His gaze swept the room, landing on me for a fraction of a second too long. Old processes, legacy systems. The client, the agency, wants speed. They want real-time analytics. We're bottlenecking their data with all these compliance checks. My stomach tightened. The compliance checks are mandated by the mesmerizingly boring but legally binding contract we signed with the Department of Defense, I said softly. Latency is a feature, not a bug. It allows for encryption scrubbing. Chase waved a hand dismissively. That's the old way of thinking, that's fear talking. We're going to streamline. I'm authorizing a bypass on the secondary firewall for the outbound logs. We go live with the new protocol on Friday. The room went quiet. The junior analysts looked at each other. They knew enough to know that was risky, but they were too young to know why. You can't do that, I said. I didn't raise my voice, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The secondary firewall isn't just for data integrity. It's a masking agent for source protection. And I'm the director of operations, Chase snapped, his veneer of cool guy boss cracking instantly. And I'm telling you, Alina, that you're too focused on the can'ts and not enough on the hows. If you can't get on board with the new direction, maybe you're not a cultural fit for where this firm is going. There it was, the threat. I didn't respond. I simply nodded, opened my laptop, and pretended to take notes. But my mind was racing. Chase wasn't just incompetent, he was a wrecking ball. He didn't know that the data he wanted to streamline included the encrypted comms of a specific asset deep inside the Russian Ministry of Defense. An asset I had been handling for 11 years. An asset known only as tungsten. My laptop gave a soft, almost imperceptible ping. It wasn't an email notification. It was a custom alert from a background daemon I had running on a partitioned drive, a drive Chase's IT team didn't know existed. I glanced at the screen. A single word flashed in the lower right corner, disguised as a system update notification. Tungsten. My heart stopped. That wasn't a scheduled contact. Tungsten only reached out unscheduled if the walls were closing in. If he was in danger. Chase was still talking. Something about vertical integration and trimming dead weight, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I stared at that notification. If Tungsten was active, I needed to be at a secure terminal immediately. I needed to authenticate the packet and route the extraction protocols. But I was stuck in a glass box with a man who thought cybersecurity was an obstacle course for his ego. Alina, Chase's voice cut through the noise. Are we boring you? I looked up. No, Chase, I'm just processing the implications. Good, he smirked, because the train is leaving the station. You're either on it or you're on the tracks. He had no idea. He thought he was threatening my job. He didn't realize he was threatening the life of the only man in Moscow who could tell us if nuclear warheads were being moved to the border. I closed my laptop. I understand the directive, I lied. I'll start reviewing the firewall protocols. That's the spirit, Chase said, clapping his hands together. See, even the old guard can learn new tricks. I walked out of that meeting with a calm, steady gait, but inside I was screaming. The game had changed. Chase wasn't just an annoyance anymore. He was a liability. And in my world, liabilities got liquidated. But first, I had to see what Tungsten had sent. And I had to do it without the disruptor-in-chief looking over my shoulder. The reorganization memo hit the company inbox at 2 p.m., and it was worse than I had anticipated. It wasn't just a restructuring of teams, it was a demolition of the compartmentalization protocols that kept our operation legal and safe. Chase called it Project Glass House. He wanted total transparency between the civilian data analysts and the government liaison officers. In layman's terms, he wanted the people who fixed the printers to have the same clearance visuals as the people routing NSA packets. I sat in my office, a small, windowless cube that I had specifically requested because it was harder to bug, and read the document 3 times. My hands weren't shaking, but I could feel a cold sweat prickling at the base of my spine. Merging these clearances was a federal crime. It was also a death sentence for any cover operative whose identity was masked in the logs. I checked the secure channel again. The tungsten alert from the morning had been a handshake, a prepare for transmission signal, but the transmission hadn't come. The digital dead drop was empty. That meant one of two things. Either tungsten had been interrupted, or he was on the run. I needed to stall Chase. I needed 24 hours to secure the line and get a clean extraction order from Langley. If Chase collapsed the firewalls on Friday, Tungsten's unique digital fingerprint, which we masked as corrupted data packets, would be visible to anyone running a basic diagnostic, including the Russian cyber warfare units monitoring our outbound traffic. I walked to Chase's office. His door was open, aggressively open, symbolizing his open door policy that was actually a trap for anyone stupid enough to walk in and disagree with him. He was standing at a whiteboard, drawing circles and arrows that meant absolutely nothing. Chase, I said, stepping into the doorway. We need to talk about Project Glass House. He turned, marker in hand, beaming. Alina, incredible, right? I'm flattening the hierarchy. No more secrets. We're going to be one big, efficient organism. Chase. Can't merge the clearance levels, I said, keeping my voice low. It violates Title 50 of the U.S. Code. It violates our contract with the client. And frankly, it's dangerous. He sighed, capping the marker with an exaggerated click. There you go again. Dangerous. Violates code. Alina, I spoke to legal. They said as long as we have internal NDAs, we're covered. You're clinging to red tape like it's a life raft. Legal reviews contracts, not operational security, I countered. There are active partitions in our system that protect external equities. If you drop the firewalls, those equities are exposed. He walked over to me, invading my personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and arrogance. Let me be clear, he said, his voice dropping to a patronizing whisper. I was brought here to fix this company, to modernize it. You represent the stagnation I was hired to eliminate. I don't care about your external equities. I care about throughput. I care about the board meeting next week where I get to show them that I increased efficiency by 40%. Efficiency at the cost of security is negligence, I said. I shouldn't have said it. I knew the moment the words left my mouth that I had crossed a line with him. But the silence from Tungsten was screaming in my ears. Chase's face hardened. The smile vanished. Negligence? You're calling me negligent. I'm advising you of the risk, I corrected. If you proceed, I will have to log a formal dissent in the compliance record. He laughed, a sharp, barking sound. Log whatever you want, Alina, but know this, I'm restructuring the personnel chart too, and I'm looking for team players, not roadblocks. I left his office, my blood running cold. He wasn't going to listen. He was going to burn the house down to prove he could fix the heating. Back at my desk, I initiated a protocol I hadn't touched in 5 years. I opened a terminal window and typed in a command line that looked like a standard disk defragmentation request. In reality, it was a heartbeat ping to Tungsten's last known location. Nothing. The cursor blinked. Come on, I thought. Give me something. Then a response. Not a location, but a code. Solstice. My breath hitched. Solstice meant the asset was burned. It meant his cover was blown. He was in immediate danger of capture or execution. He needed immediate extraction. I reached for the secure phone to call the station chief at Langley. I needed to declare an emergency. Alina, I jumped. Chase was standing in the doorway of my office. He had 2 people with him, the head of HR, a woman named Linda who looked like she was constantly smelling something unpleasant, and a security guard. Put the phone down, Chase said. Wasn't smiling anymore. I'm in the middle of a diagnostic, I said, my hand hovering over the receiver. It's critical, it's over, Chase said. Linda stepped forward, clutching a folder to her chest. Alina, effective immediately, your employment is terminated for cause. Specifically, insubordination and refusal to adhere to new operational directives. I stared at them. They were firing me, in the middle of an active exfiltration crisis. You can't do this right now, I said, my voice steady but urgent. Chase, listen to me. There's a situation unfolding that you do not understand. If you cut my access now, people will die. Chase rolled his eyes. Always the drama. People will die. It's a server farm, Alina, not a battlefield. Hand over your badge and your laptop. I looked at the phone. I looked at the terminal where the word solstice was fading from the screen. If I fought them, security would drag me out. It would cause a scene, and I would lose any chance of helping Tungsten from the outside. I had to play the long game. I had to let them win the battle so I could win the war. Okay, I said. I stood up slowly. You want the badge? You can have it. I reached for my lanyard. But as I did, my other hand brushed the enter key on my keyboard one last time. It wasn't to save a file. It was to execute a script I had written years ago. A dead man's switch. If my credentials were revoked without a specific suppression code, the system would silently tag every single action Chase took from this moment forward and mirror it to a secure cloud server accessible only by the CIA. Here, I said, handing the badge to Linda. And the laptop, Chase demanded. I closed the lid. It's encrypted. You won't be able to access it. IT will wipe it, Chase sneered. Get your personal effects. You have 5 minutes. There is a specific kind of silence that accompanies a walk of shame in a corporate office. As Linda and the security guard escorted me back to my desk to collect my personal items, the entire floor seemed to hold its breath. Heads bowed, eyes averted. The junior analysts, the ones who had laughed at Chase's jokes, suddenly found their screens incredibly fascinating. They were terrified. If the compliance officer, the fixture who had been there for a decade, be walked out like a criminal, no one was safe. I didn't look at them. I focused on the task. I picked up a framed photo of a dog I didn't own. Standard tradecraft makes you look human without revealing personal leverage, a stress ball, and my favorite mug. I left the plants. They were fake anyway, much like Chase's leadership skills. Make sure she doesn't take any flash drives, Chase barked from the hallway. He was enjoying this. He was preening. He was the alpha wolf culling the weak. I have nothing but personal effects, I said to the guard, opening my purse to show him. He looked embarrassed. He knew me. We had chatted about his kids' soccer games for years. Sorry, Miss Rudenko, he muttered. Just doing the job. I know, Mike, it's okay. As I walked to the elevators, I felt the severance of the digital tether. My phone, which had been synced to the company's secure server, buzzed once and then went dark as the MDM, mobile device management, profile was remotely wiped. I was now blind. I couldn't see the logs. I couldn't see the firewall status. I couldn't see Tungsten, but Chase had made a critical error. He assumed that revoking my clearance stopped the machinery I had built. It didn't. It just removed the brakes. The elevator doors closed, shutting out the sight of Chase standing with his arms crossed. Victor's smirk plastered on his face. As the car descended, I closed my eyes and exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. The mask slipped for just a second. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through me. Tungsten was out there in the cold, and his handler had just been blinded. I walked out of the lobby and into the humid DC afternoon. The sun was blinding. It felt surreal to be standing on the sidewalk at 2:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. I walked 2 blocks north, away from the building, to a nondescript sedan parked in a garage that cost more per hour than most people made in a day. I got in, locked the doors, and reached under the passenger seat. I pulled out a burner phone, a heavy encrypted satellite device that looked like a relic from 2005. I powered it on. It took 30 seconds to acquire a signal. Those 30 seconds felt like a lifetime. I dialed a number that didn't exist in any phone book. Status. Male voice answered. No greeting. This is Handler 7 Alpha, I said. My cover is blown. I've been terminated from the front company. Credentials revoked. There was a pause, and the asset signaled solstice at 1400 hours. I was unable to initiate extraction before loss of access. Damn it, the voice hissed. It was the deputy station chief. How compromised is the company architecture? The new director, Chase, is lowering the firewalls on Friday. He's merging the clearance levels. If Tungsten tries to route through the server after that, his traffic will be visible to anyone looking, and the Russians are definitely looking. We can't raid the company without cause, the chief said. It would alert the Kremlin that the company is a CIA front. We need a trigger. You'll have it, I said, watching the entrance of my old office building through the windshield. I left a logic bomb in the exit protocol. When Chase runs his optimization script on Friday, it's going to flag every irregular packet as a security breach and auto-report it to the DoD. It will look like a massive data leak caused by incompetence. That's risky, Alina. It's necessary, I said. Chase is going to hang himself. I just provided the rope, but we need to get Tungsten out now. I need you to activate the secondary relay. We can't do that without the encryption keys you held at the firm. I know, I said. That's why I need you to pick me up. I didn't write the keys down. I memorized them. Stay put. Asset recovery team is inbound. Eat 10 minutes. I hung up and leaned back in the seat. I watched the building. Chase was probably up there right now, giving a speech about the new era. He had no idea that by firing me, he had just engaged the gears of a machine that would grind him into dust. They took the bait, I whispered to the empty car. But as I watched, I saw a notification pop up on the burner phone. It was a forwarded packet from the passive listening post I had set up on the company's guest Wi-Fi months ago. Subject, priority / tungsten / location ping. It was a geolocation tag. Moscow, but not the ministry. It was a transit hub. He was moving, and he was terrified. Thursday passed in a blur of manic energy inside the company. According to the intercepted chatter I was monitoring from my temporary base of operations, a sterile hotel room in Arlington with blackout curtains, Chase was on a victory lap. He had ordered pizza for the entire floor. He was walking around high-fiving the developers. He had scheduled the firewall migration for Friday morning, calling it Liberation Day. I sat in the dark, the glow of 3 monitors illuminating my face. The satellite uplink was stable. I had recreated a mirror of the network traffic using the backdoor I'd mentioned to the chief. It wasn't full access. I couldn't stop Chase, but I could see what he was doing. At 10 o'clock a.m., a junior sysadmin named Kevin, a good kid, smart but timid, flagged an anomaly. I saw the ticket appear in the queue. Ticket #9942, irregular encrypted traffic on port 8080. Originates from legacy sector. Recommendation, delay migration until source is identified. Port 8080 was the channel Tungsten used. It was the lifeline. Kevin had spotted the heartbeat. I watched the ticket status. 10 minutes later it was updated. Status, closed, resolved by Chase admin. Notes, ignore legacy noise. Proceed with migration. Stop looking for ghosts, Kevin. My fist clenched around the coffee mug until my knuckles turned white. Chase wasn't just ignoring the warning signs. He was actively suppressing them to preserve his timeline. He was choosing his ego over national security. I switched screens to the map of Moscow. The geolocation tag for Tungsten hadn't moved in 4 hours. That was bad. An asset on the run keeps moving. Static means captured or dead or pinned down. Come on, I whispered. Move. The phone rang. It was the chief, Alina. We have visual confirmation of activity near the asset's last ping. FSB vans, heavy presence. My stomach dropped. Did they find him? Unclear. But we're picking up chatter on the Russian military bands. They know there's a leak. They're closing the net. They're looking for the digital footprint. And tomorrow morning, Chase is going to light up that footprint like a flare, I said. Can you stop it remotely? No. He physically pulled the server blades for the secondary firewall. He's bypassing the software controls. It's a hardware bridge now. Unless I walk in there and cut the cable with bolt cutters, the data merges at 0900 tomorrow. We can't get a team in there that fast without causing a diplomatic incident, the chief said. If we raid a US company, we admit we were using it for espionage. The Russians will use that to justify executing the asset publicly. So we have to let Chase do it. I realized, the horror settling in. We have to let him expose the asset to prove the incompetence. No, the chief said. We need a diversion. We need the system to crash before the merge completes. I looked at the code scrolling on my third monitor. The dead man's switch I had mentioned earlier. It was designed to log errors, but with a few tweaks, it could be weaponized. I can overload the logic bomb, I said. Turn it into a denial-of-service attack from the inside. It will brick the servers. We'll destroy the company's credibility, cost them millions, and probably get Chase arrested for negligence. Do it, the chief said. Burn the company. Save the asset. I need to get close, I said. My remote access is read only. I need to be within Wi-Fi range of the building to inject the command. You're compromised, Alina. If they see you, they won't see me, I said, standing up and grabbing my coat. I'm just the woman they fired. I'm nobody. I drove back to the city as the sun went down. The building, a tower of glass and steel, loomed against the twilight sky. It looked peaceful, corporate, safe. Inside, Chase was probably drafting his press release about the successful restructuring. I parked in the underground garage, 3 spots away from the elevator bank. I pulled out a high-gain antenna and connected it to my laptop. I scanned the networks. There it was, guest Wi-Fi, weak but usable. I started typing. The code was complex, a cascade of commands that would flood the internal routers with contradictory instructions the moment the migration started. It wouldn't stop the merge, but it would freeze the data flow long enough for the asset to go dark. As I worked, I saw a movement in the rearview mirror, a security patrol car. I lowered the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The car cruised past, the guard sweeping a flashlight over the rows of parked vehicles. The beam washed over my windshield, blinding me for a second. He didn't stop. I let out a breath and hit enter. Command queued, execute at 090000. I was setting the timer on a bomb, and I was sitting right on top of it. Friday morning, 08:59 a.m. I wasn't in the building, but I could imagine the scene perfectly. Chase would be standing at the front of the operations floor, probably holding a coffee cup with a smug slogan like "Fueling the Hustle." The junior analysts would be at their stations, fingers hovering over keyboards, waiting for the go command. The big screens on the wall would be displaying the network topology, currently green, waiting to turn the new shade of optimized blue that Chase was so fond of. I was sitting in a diner across the street, nursing a tea I hadn't touched. My laptop was open, connected to the passive sniffer. 0900 a.m. Process initiated. The data stream on my screen spiked. Chase had flipped the switch. The firewalls dropped. The disparate databases, civilian HR records, payroll, and the highly classified intelligence routing logs began to merge into one data lake. For 3 seconds, it worked. Then, the logic bomb detonated. On my screen, the traffic graph didn't just spike, it flatlined. Code I had injected flooded the routers with billions of requests per second, specifically targeting the handshake protocols between the merged databases. Inside the building, the effect would be immediate. Screens freezing, alarms blaring, the server room fans spinning up to maximum RPM, sounding like jet engines trying to take off. I watched the guest Wi-Fi signal flicker and die. The entire building's external comms went down, but I wasn't celebrating, because in those 3 seconds before the crash, a single packet had escaped. A packet tagged with the digital signature of tungsten. I checked the burner phone. A message from the chief, leak detected. Russian signals intelligence just spiked. They saw IT, damn it, I cursed, slamming the laptop shut. Chase had been too fast, or my code had been a millisecond too slow. The optimizing script had pushed the queue out before the crash took hold. Tungsten's location and encryption key had been broadcast in the clear for a fraction of a second. It was enough. I threw cash on the table and ran out of the diner. The phone buzzed again, asset going dark. Emergency Protocol Zulu. Protocol Zulu meant every man for himself. The CIA was cutting the line. They were disavowing the operation to protect the agency. Tungsten was on his own. I sat in my car, staring at the building. People were starting to gather in the lobby, visible through the glass, confusion, panic. Then the emails started hitting the public servers, which were on a backup loop. My personal phone, which I had reactivated, lit up with notifications from former colleagues who still had my number. Text from Sarah accounting. OMG Alina, everything is down. Chase is screaming at it. Smoke in the server room. Text from Kevin, sysadmin. Did you do this? The logs? They're garbage, but I saw something before it crashed. Do D headers? Alina, what were we actually working on? Kevin was smart. He was putting it together. And if he was putting it together, Chase would be looking for a scapegoat within the hour. I needed to disappear, but I couldn't. I had to wait for the cleanup crew. At 10:30 a.m., the first real consequence arrived. Not the police, not the FBI, legal. The company's general counsel, a terrifying woman named Miss Vane, arrived in a town car. She stormed into the building. Half an hour later, 3 contracts with NATO-linked vendors were abruptly paused. The automated systems at the Pentagon had detected the breach and automatically severed ties with the firm. Chase's efficiency had just cost the company its primary revenue stream in 90 minutes. But inside the bubble of his ego, he still didn't get it. I checked the intercepted internal comms, which were now leaking like a sieve due to the crash. Chase to CEO, minor glitch in the migration. Legacy hardware issue, fixing it now. Rudenko left us a mess. He was blaming me. Perfect. I dialed the chief. The breach is confirmed. Chase is trying to cover it up. He's blaming the crash on my previous mismanagement. Let him, the chief said. His voice was ice cold. The asset has been moved. We think we got him to a safe house, but it's close, too close. The Russians are tearing Moscow apart. And the company, we're done with them. The station chief is landing in DC in 2 hours. We're taking over. Am I clear? I asked. Not yet, the chief said. You're the handler. You need to testify. You need to walk back into that building and point the finger. Walk back in? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. They'll arrest me for trespassing. No, they won't, the chief said, because you're going to walk in with us. Monday morning, 6:03 a.m. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, casting the executive parking garage in deep, bruised purples and grays. The air smelled of ozone and wet concrete. 2 black SUVs rolled into the garage, moving with the heavy, predatory grace of sharks entering a reef. They didn't stop at the security booth. The barrier arm lifted automatically, overridden by a remote signal. I sat in the back of the second SUV. Next to me was the deputy station chief, a man named Miller who looked like a geography teacher but had killed men with his bare hands in 3 different decades. Ready? Miller asked. I've been ready since Thursday, I said, smoothing the lapel of my jacket. I wasn't wearing my cardigan today. I was wearing a sharp, tailored navy suit. I wasn't the compliance officer anymore. I was the asset handler. The vehicles stopped in the reserved spots marked CEO and Director of Ops. We got out. 4 other agents, plainclothes but clearly armed, flanked us. We walked to the elevator. Miller swiped a card that definitely wasn't issued by HR. The lights on the panel turned green. We rode up to the 40th floor in silence. When the doors opened, the reception area was empty except for the night guard, who looked up, saw the badges hanging from the agents' necks, and wisely decided to look back down at his phone. We walked straight to the main conference room. The CEO, a nervous man named Sterling who usually let his directors run wild, was already there. Chase was there too, looking disheveled. He clearly hadn't slept. He was pacing, yelling into a phone. I don't care what the logs say, it's a sabotage. That woman planted a virus, Chase shouted. He spun around as the doors opened. He froze. He saw me. Then he saw Miller. Then he saw the agents blocking the door. Who are? Chase started, lowering the phone. Can't just barge in here. This is a secure facility. It was a secure facility, Miller said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He walked to the head of the table and threw a thick file down on the mahogany surface. The sound was like a gunshot. Now it's a crime scene. Who are you? Sterling, the CEO asked, standing up. He was shaking. Central Intelligence Agency, Miller said, and you just burned our most valuable asset in the Eastern Hemisphere. Chase laughed. It was a nervous, hysterical sound. CIA? You're joking. This is a data management firm. We do payroll for the duty. That's the cover, I said, stepping forward. Chase looked at me, his eyes widening. I fired you. Security? Sit down, Chase, Miller barked. It wasn't a request. It was a command that compelled obedience on a genetic level. Chase sat. Alina Rudenko is a GS-15 intelligence liaison, Miller continued. She was placed here to manage a specific, compartmentalized stream of data. A stream you, Mr. Chase, decided to democratize last Friday. I was optimizing, Chase stammered. The efficiency metrics? Your optimization broadcast the location of a deep cover operative to the Russian FSB, Miller interrupted. At 090003 on Friday, your merge server packet sent a clear text header with his coordinates. At 11 o'clock, his apartment was raided. He is currently missing. The color drained from Chase's face. He looked from Miller to me, but she didn't tell me, she just talked about compliance. I told you it was dangerous, I said, my voice cold. I told you it violated Title 50. I told you people would die. You told me I was dead weight. We need access to everything, Miller said to the CEO. Every server, every hard drive, every email, and specifically, audit logs of Mr. Chase's administrative overrides. Of course, Sterling whispered, whatever you need, and Chase? Miller looked at the director of ops, who was now sweating profusely. You're not going anywhere. Federal agents are outside your home right now executing a search warrant. Search warrant? Chase squeaked. For what? Espionage Act violations, gross negligence, mishandling of classified information. Miller leaned in close. You wanted to be a disruptor, Chase. Congratulations, you just disrupted the national security of the United States. Chase slumped in his chair, defeated. He looked at me pleadingly. Alina, tell them. It was just a reorg. I looked at him. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just the cold calculation of the job. It wasn't a reorg, Chase, I said. It was a suicide. The next 3 days were a masterclass in forensic destruction. The company didn't just stop working, it was dissected. The CIA technical team, led by experts who made Chase's rockstar developers look like toddlers with crayons, ripped the servers apart. I sat in a temporary office on the 40th floor, Chase's old office, ironically, guiding them through the architecture. Here, I pointed to a string of code on the projected screen. This is where he bypassed the encryption handshake. He manually disabled the SSL verification to speed up the packet transfer. Lead tech shook his head. He disabled SSL on a top-secret relay? Is he insane? He's efficient, I said dryly. Down the hall in the conference room, Chase was undergoing a debriefing that was rapidly turning into an interrogation. He was trying to spin it. I could hear him through the thin walls sometimes, his voice rising in desperate pitches. She was erratic, Chase yelled at one point. She refused to communicate. She sabotaged the code, but the logs didn't lie. That afternoon, Miller walked in with a printed report. He's trying to pin the crash on your logic bomb, he said. Claims you maliciously attacked the company infrastructure. I did, I said, to stop the leak. We know that, and the logs prove it, Miller said. The timestamps are clear. Your denial of service attack hit after his migration script executed the bypass. If you hadn't crashed the system, the leak would have continued for hours instead of seconds. You didn't cause the breach. Lena, you cauterized the wound. Does the Senate know that? I asked. You're about to tell them, Miller said. The Select Committee on Intelligence is convening a closed session tomorrow. They want to hear from the handler. The hearing was held in a SIF-sensitive compartmented information facility, deep in the bowels of the Capitol building. No phones, no windows, just heavy wood tables and senators who looked very tired and very angry. I sat alone at the witness table. Behind me, CEO Sterling and Chase sat with their expensive lawyers. Chase looked like a ghost. He had lost 10 pounds in 3 days. Senator Vance, the chair, adjusted his glasses. Miss Rudenko, you served as the liaison for 11 years? Yes, Senator. And in that time, did you ever have a security breach? Never, sir, until Mr. Chase arrived. Correct. Chase's lawyer stood up. Objection. My client was acting within his authority as Director of Operations to modernize. Sit down, Senator Vance snapped. This isn't a courtroom, counselor. It's an inquiry into how we lost eyes on the Kremlin. He turned back to me. Miss Rudenko, in your professional opinion, was this avoidable? I turned in my chair to look directly at Chase. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at the table, picking at a loose thread on his cuff. It wasn't just avoidable, Senator, I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. It was predicted. I warned him verbally. I warned him in writing. I warned him via the protocols. He chose to view security as an obstacle to his personal ambition. He didn't just break the rules. He broke the shield. Chase flinched. The forensic IT report confirms your statement, Vance said, flipping a page. Chase ordered the physical removal of the firewall blades. That requires intent. He called it trimming the fat, I added. Vance took off his glasses. Well, it seems he trimmed the wrong thing. Hearing lasted 4 hours. By the end, Chase's career wasn't just over, it was incinerated. The lawyers were already distancing themselves. Sterling, the CEO, looked like he was mentally calculating his golden parachute, which Miller had assured me was being frozen by the Treasury. As we walked out, Chase tried to approach me. Alina, he rasped, I didn't know, you have to believe me. I didn't know it was real spies. I stopped. I looked at him one last time. That's the problem, Chase, I said. You thought the world was just data. You forgot there are people attached to it. I walked away. But the victory felt hollow, because we still hadn't heard from Tungsten. 2 days later, Chase was formally placed on administrative leave pending the conclusion of the FBI investigation. The pending part was a formality. He was done. His security clearance, what little he had, was permanently revoked. He would never work in defense, tech, or likely even a bank again. He was radioactive. The company was in shambles. The stock had plummeted 40% after the data breach news leaked. The press didn't know it was CIA data, just that it was a massive failure. Layoffs were starting. The synergy Chase had promised had resulted in total collapse. I was back in my apartment. I wasn't working. I was technically still fired, pending reinstatement. I spent my days drinking tea and staring at the secure phone Miller had left me. Silence is the loudest sound in the world when you're waiting for a ghost to call. Miller had told me the extraction team in Moscow had found the safe house empty. Signs of a struggle? Maybe, or maybe just a hurried exit, they didn't know. Tungsten was in the wind. If he was dead, it was on my conscience. I should have stopped Chase sooner. I should have physically pulled the fire alarm. I should have done something. A knock on my door. I froze. I checked the peephole. It was a courier, not a tactical team, a regular FedEx guy. I opened the door, delivery for Alina Rudenko. I signed for it. It was a small padded envelope, no return address. I took it to the kitchen and scanned it with a handheld detector. No electronics, no explosives. I opened it. Inside was a cheap plastic flash drive and a postcard. The postcard was a tourist image of a beach in Thailand. Generic, you could buy it at any airport. I turned it over. The handwriting was jagged, hurried, Cyrillic script, translation, I am safe. Thank you for the loud noise. They were looking at the fire and I left through the back door. I dropped the postcard and grabbed the table to steady myself. Tears, hot and unexpected, pricked my eyes, the crash, my logic bomb, the massive data spike. It hadn't just exposed the leak. It had created a chaotic diversion. Russian cyber defense teams had been so focused on the massive attack coming from the American server, my denial of service flood, that they had momentarily taken their eyes off the physical surveillance net. I hadn't just cauterized the wound. I had set off a smoke bomb, and in that smoke, Tungsten had slipped away. I plugged the flash drive into my isolated laptop. It contained a single text file, a list of coordinates, a retrieval site in Helsinki. He was out. It was across the border. I laughed. It started as a chuckle and turned into a full-body release of tension. I sat on my kitchen floor, holding the postcard of the Thai beach, laughing until my sides ached. Chase's incompetence had endangered him, but my sabotage had saved him. The phone rang. It was Miller. We just got a ping from the Helsinki station, Miller said. He walked in 10 minutes ago. He's asking for Handler 7 Alpha. He's safe, I said. I voiced thick with emotion. He is, Miller said, and he brought the data. The archive Chase tried to delete. Tungsten had a backup on him. We didn't lose anything, except a mid-sized consulting firm. A fair trade, I said. Get dressed, Alina, Miller said. The director wants to see you. The meeting with the director was brief. There were no medals. We don't get medals for fixing messes, only for preventing them, but there was an offer. We're dissolving the contract with the firm. The director said, obviously. We're moving the data handling in-house. We want you to run the division. I'm not a manager, I said. I'm a handler. You're both, he said. You navigated a hostile corporate takeover, neutralized a compromised executive, and orchestrated a blind extraction of a Tier 1 asset using nothing but a laptop and a logic bomb. You're exactly what we need. I took the job. 1 week later, I went back to the building one last time to clear out my office, for real this time. The atmosphere was funeral. The synergy posters were being taken down. The open plan office was quiet, but it was the quiet of defeat, not focus. I saw Kevin, the young sysadmin. He was packing a box. Alina, he asked, looking up, I heard rumors that you're with the government? You shouldn't listen to rumors, Kevin, I said gently. But you're good at what you do. Check your LinkedIn tomorrow. I might know some people looking for a sysadmin who knows how to read logs. He smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile. Thanks, Alina. As I walked toward the elevators, the doors opened and Chase walked out. He was unrecognizable, no suit, just jeans and a t-shirt. He was carrying a box of personal items. He looked smaller, deflated. The arrogance had been surgically removed by the reality of federal indictments. He saw me. He stopped. The lobby was busy, people leaving, lawyers entering, but for a moment it was just the two of us. The disruptor and the dinosaur. I didn't know, he said again. It was his mantra, his shield against the crushing weight of his own stupidity. Ignorance isn't a defense, Chase, I said. It's a vulnerability. What happens to me now, he asked. He sounded like a child. You go to court, I said. You plead guilty. You probably do some time. Maybe just probation if you cooperate, but you'll never touch a keyboard for a cleared company again. He looked down at his box. It held his world's best boss mug, which he had bought for himself, and a stress ball. I just wanted to make it better, he whispered. You wanted to make it yours, I corrected. There's a difference. I walked past him. I didn't look back. Outside, the air was crisp. The black sedan was waiting. Miller was in the driver's seat. I got in. Where to? Miller asked. Langley, I said. We have a debrief with Tungsten at 1400. Copy that. As we pulled away, I watched the glass tower recede in the rearview mirror. It was just a building, a shell. Inside, people were panicking about quarterly earnings and press releases. But out here in the shadows, the real work continued. I wasn't the compliance lady anymore. I wasn't the gray woman in the cardigan. I was the firewall, and I held the keys. Drive, I said. Miller merged into traffic, and we vanished into the stream, invisible, silent, and absolutely essential.